The story of Adam and Eve is one of the most iconic narratives in the Bible, found in the book of Genesis, the first book of Scripture. It describes the creation of the first human beings by God and their early life in the Garden of Eden. This story is central to understanding the concept of original sin and the fall of humanity. God, after creating the heavens, the earth and all living things, decided to form the first man. He molded Adam from the dust of the earth and then breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, giving him existence. Adam was created in the image and likeness of God, with the ability to think, feel and make decisions. God placed Adam in the Garden of Eden, an earthly paradise where he had everything he needed to live in harmony. The Garden of Eden was a place of incredible beauty and abundance. It was filled with fruit trees, crystal clear rivers and lush vegetation. In the center of the garden, God placed two special trees, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Adam was charged with looking after the garden and was given the freedom to eat from any tree except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. God told Adam that the day he ate from the fruit of this tree, he would surely die. Although Adam lived in paradise, God realized that it wasn't good for man to be alone. So he decided to create a companion for Adam. God caused Adam to fall into a deep sleep, and while he slept, he removed one of his ribs and from it formed Eve, the first woman. Eve was brought to Adam, and he recognized her as bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. They lived in perfect harmony, naked but without shame, for they knew no sin. In the Garden of Eden there was also a serpent, which was more cunning than all the other animals. The serpent was actually a representation of evil, and he decided to deceive Eve. Approaching her, the serpent questioned God's commandment and suggested that eating the forbidden fruit would not bring death, but the knowledge of good and evil, making them like God. Eve, seeing that the fruit was pleasing to the eye and desirable for acquiring wisdom, took of the fruit and ate. She also gave of the fruit to Adam, who was with her, and he also ate. After eating the fruit, both their eyes were opened and they realized they were naked. For the first time, they felt ashamed and tried to cover themselves with fig leaves. When they heard God's voice walking through the garden, they hid among the trees in fear. God called out to Adam, who answered timidly, admitting that he was afraid because he was naked. God then asked if they had eaten of the forbidden fruit. Adam blamed Eve, and Eve blamed the serpent. In response to the disobedience, God pronounced judgment on the serpent, the woman and the man. The serpent was cursed to crawl on its belly and enmity was put between it and the woman's offspring. Eve was condemned to suffer intensely in the pains of childbirth and to have her desire turned towards her husband, who would rule over her. Adam was condemned to work hard to obtain sustenance from the land, which would now produce thorns and weeds. In addition, God declared that because they were made from dust, to dust they would return, thus introducing human mortality. As a result of their disobedience, God expelled Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden, so that they would not have access to the tree of life and would live eternally in their fallen state. God placed cherubim and a flaming sword that turned in all directions to guard the path to the tree of life. Adam and Eve were then sent out of Eden to work the land from which they had been taken. They began a new life outside of paradise, facing the hardships and suffering of human life, but with the promise that one day redemption would come. The story of Adam and Eve is rich in symbolism and lessons. It tells us about the nature of temptation, the importance of obedience to God, and the consequences of sin. At the same time, it points to the hope of redemption that will develop throughout the scriptures, as God works to restore humanity to a right relationship with Him. The story of Adam and Eve is a deeply rich and complex narrative that has continued to captivate and inspire people throughout the centuries. It is not only an origin story, explaining how humanity came to be and why the world is the way it is, but also a study of human nature, free will, and the consequences of our choices. The fascination of this story lies in its ability to address fundamental questions about human existence, good and evil, obedience and disobedience, innocence and guilt, and the ongoing struggle between our desires and the will of God. Adam and Eve represent all of us, with our yearnings for freedom and knowledge, but also our propensity to err and stray from what is good. Moreover, the story shows us the fragility of the human condition and how, even in paradise, temptation and the choice to disobey can lead to a fall. Yet, even amidst the judgment and expulsion from Eden, there is a message of hope and redemption. God's covering of Adam and Eve with animal skins suggests an act of mercy and points to a future in which humanity can be restored. The story of Adam and Eve is also fascinating because it touches on universal themes that transcend religion. It speaks of responsibility, the search for identity, and the desire to understand the world around us. These issues are as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago, making the story timeless and applicable to all generations. Ultimately, the story of Adam and Eve invites us to reflect on our own lives, the choices we make, the temptations we face, and the consequences of our actions. It reminds us that despite our fall, there is always the possibility of redemption and finding a way back to what is good and righteous. This story, with its depth and symbolism, continues to resonate in hearts and minds, maintaining its place as one of the most powerful and influential narratives of all time. For many Christians, Jews, and Muslims, the story of Adam and Eve is central to understanding the human condition. It is seen as God's explanation of the origin of sin and evil in the world, as well as the need for redemption. The story is often interpreted literally or symbolically, but always with great respect for its central role in faith and morality. Within these traditions, Adam and Eve are considered the first human beings, and their actions have profound implications for all their descendants. In popular culture and literature, the story of Adam and Eve is often explored as a metaphor for the loss of innocence, the struggle for freedom, and the complexity of human choices. Authors, artists, and thinkers throughout the centuries have reinterpreted this narrative in a variety of ways, from Renaissance artworks to modern novels, which often highlight the psychological and existential aspects of the story from a scientific perspective, especially within the fields of evolutionary biology and anthropology. The story of Adam and Eve is not seen as a literal account of the origins of humanity. Instead, it is often interpreted as a cultural myth, one of many creation stories that different cultures have developed to explain their origins and the nature of human beings. Scientists generally point to evolution as the evidence-based explanation for the development of human life. In short, public opinion about the story of Adam and Eve is extremely diverse, reflecting the wide range of ways in which people interpret and relate to this narrative. For some, it is a sacred and untouchable tale; for others, it is a metaphor rich in meaning; and for still others, it is one cultural legend among many. What is clear is that, regardless of perspective, the story of Adam and Eve continues to provoke thought, discussion, and debate, maintaining its place as one of the most influential stories in human history.